It is again time for a book review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Nightblade by Garrett Robinson. Hello everyone, it is Samantha and I hope you guys are having a great day. I'm here today with another book review, trying to keep up on my 2016 goal of doing more book reviews. Today I'm going to be doing The Nightblade by Garrett Robinson. I received this from the author in exchange for a free and honest review, and that is exactly what you're going to get today, so stay tuned to see what I think of this book. So Nightblade follows our young protagonist, Lauren. She is a young woman who was born to very cruel parents in a small village in this woodland area. She's basically destined to live her life getting married off by her parents in order to retrieve her dowry and still being under the cruel thumb of her abusive father and mother, until one day she sees a wizard fleeing through the woods, the wizard Zane. She ends up following him and she is able to persuade him to allow her to accompany him and leave this village and the tyranny of her parents. So she quickly returns home and she retrieves a few belongings, including this mysterious knife that has been sitting in a box in her parents' house for years. And she ends up joining the wizard Zane and using her wizardman skills to basically get them out of the forest and away from these soldiers that he is fleeing. However, shortly after she ends up helping him to escape the woods, he ends up ditching her the next night, and she kind of ends up setting off on her own. She ends up joining up with a caravan of merchants who seem to have a mysterious secret. They seem to be hiding something, but they also protect her from the soldiers who are also now pursuing her because of her association with this wizard. So she ends up joining them, but they seem to be harboring this dark secret that she ends up kind of discovering, and she also starts to develop an unlikely friendship with the head merchant's daughter, who, for whatever reason, does not much care for her mother and also wants to escape. So together the two end up escaping into this major city nearby to kind of start a life of their own, but things kind of take off from there because they're being pursued by everyone. Lauren and the young merchant girl are being pursued by the girl's mother, as well as thieving groups and other shady characters from the city. And Lauren soon discovers that this knife that she stole from her parents' house has a very interesting past, because people seem to not only recognize this knife, but fear it, and it seems to mean something, and to give a hint as to who they believe she is and what group she is a part of. So Lauren basically sets off to kind of start a life of her own, try and reconnect with the wizard Zane, and trying to figure out what exactly this knife means, all while trying to stay alive and run from these people who are trying to capture her. So overall, I enjoyed the book. It is a pretty standard fantasy story, kind of a coming of age, your unlikely hero who's clearly going to set off to become a well-known figure and to put the world to rights kind of a story. I enjoyed it, but there were parts that felt a little bit cliche and felt a little bit predictable. But my biggest problem with this book was probably the dialogue. The dialogue to me felt very stiff and formal, and the way that the characters were talking did not feel natural at all. I would often find myself while reading the dialogue getting pulled out of the story because it felt so unnatural to me. The only way I can describe it is that it almost felt a little Dickensian or Shakespearean in nature, the way that they were talking. It was super formal and it was super formal and felt very archaic, and especially when the characters, the young characters, such as this 10-year-old boy that she comes in contact with and herself, the way that they were talking were ways that I would expect people of the upper classes to speak. Just very formal, very structured, and it just did not feel natural whatsoever. So that was probably my biggest complaint with the book, was the dialogue. I just had a really hard time getting into it, and it kept pulling me out of the story. The plot itself, it was enjoyable. It felt like it could have been a little bit more fleshed out. As for the characters, I felt like they were pretty well fleshed out. There were some characters that felt a little bit more flat than others. Most of the people in the merchant caravan, I felt like we could have had a lot more character development with them. They all felt vaguely mysterious, but in no way did I ever feel connected to them. I didn't feel like I ever really knew them. They all kind of felt the same. In particular, the merchant's daughter, she felt like she could have had a little bit more built up around her. I felt like there could have been a lot more done with her character than was done. Lauren herself was probably the most well-developed of all the characters. She's definitely a very strong female protagonist who is trying to fight and start her own life and fight for what she believes in, which I really enjoyed. As for the story itself, like I said earlier, it's your pretty typical fantasy story. It has a lot of the same cliched tropes that you see in a lot of fantasies, so it's kind of a coming-of-age story. An unlikely hero sets out in the world, but it has some interesting twists that I think are enjoyable, such as her becoming more of a thief character centered around the mystery of this knife and wanting to use it for good. I enjoyed those. I think the story could have had a little bit more to it. I feel like we just kind of got the tip of the iceberg of what could eventually be a very excellent story, but I feel like we could have gotten a little bit more hints about what is going on with this knife and what it means than we did. That is still a mystery that we kept getting hinted at throughout the whole book, but nothing was ever resolved. And we never really got any other little tidbits aside from the fact that this is like a mysterious knife that a lot of people know about and is part of this secret organization that we don't even have any idea what this organization is, what its name is, or what it does. And I feel like it would have been nice to get a little bit more information about this in this book, but we didn't. So I definitely am intrigued to continue on with the series. I do believe they are out now as well, the next books in the series. So I do want to kind of see where the story goes off from there. I can see how this book would have a lot of potential to be a very, very good fantasy story. I think that it could have benefited from a little bit more fleshing out not only of the characters but also of the plot. But overall, it was a pretty good fantasy story. I'd rate about 2.5, 3 stars in that range. I'm kind of having a hard time pinpointing whether I want it to be 2.5 or 3. Not the best fantasy story I've read, but not the worst. And it's definitely something that I would recommend checking out if you're just starting to read fantasy and it's a newer genre to you. I think it would be something that would be very easy to get into. Or if you're looking for a strong female protagonist, particularly for a YA audience, I think this would also be a good one to check out. I do want to continue on with the series. It's not the best one I read, but it's not the worst, and it definitely holds some promise. So I'm intrigued to see how book 2 stacks up against book 1. Alright guys, that is it for my spoiler-free review of The Night Blade by Garrett Robinson. You'll have to let me know if you have any questions about this book, and I will try to answer them down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy reading. Bye!